Okay. Okay, so while you're working on that, I'll just summarize what Carol said. So Carol had some reports. Her sleep's not so great, higher increase of sweets, cravings. Reports she has leaky gut and Hashimoto's, and has a really wonderful Genova diagnostic, which is the stool 2200 test that both Christopher and I love running on people. So this was done back in August 26th. It was collected. It's either a 1-day or 3-day sampling. And this is a typical example of what I and Christopher see all the time. There's an increase of potential pathogens, and the beneficial ones are all gone. There's no diversity. Big chunks of good symbionts are all gone. And Carol reports she may not have answered the antibiotics, but most people report using several courses of antibiotics in their life, even starting as a child or having formula, and that's a common fingerprint. Use of antibiotics, use of a lot of formula, and then subsequent gut or health issues. There were some fats in the stools, and there's an easy way to ameliorate this. Christopher, do you use a lot of the digestive enzymes in your clients?
I do. The danger is I worry about some of them containing hydrochloric acid because I know that that's contraindicated with an H. pylori infection, which I see a lot of.
Yeah.
So I tend to recommend just the digestive enzymes, and it's actually quite hard to find a product that contains just the digestive enzymes. And the one I normally recommend is called Dipan 9. It's made by Thorne, but it's spectacularly expensive. So maybe have you got any? What do you use, Grace? What do you recommend?
A variety of brands. I go with the pancreatic enzymes. If someone's vegan, that's a little difficult. I try not to avoid all the vegetarian brands or vegetarian category of digestive enzymes because these are grown on mold. So most people already have some kind of sensitivity to their own internal candida, and this kind of just cross-translates to every mold out there. So if they grow these and cultivate the enzymes, digestive enzymes, amylases, proteases, all from Aspergillus or other associated mold or Saccharomyces. So if you have dishwashing liquid or solution, or for your machine, you'll see amylases. These are usually from cheap sources like mold. So
let's just sync up here. I should probably confirm before we go any further that people can see the test result that we're looking at.
I see it.
You see it. That's good. Okay, so we're in the digestion and absorption section, and so what we're seeing here is especially the phospholipid. So phospholipid is just a way of packaging fat, and so that's turned up in the sample, and that's telling you that something's going wrong, that the digestion is not working as well as it should, right?
Yeah, and this is easy to take care of. Also, I like bitters. Bitters are very natural. They're found in ales and meads and naturally fermented homemade beers. I use one bitter right now with really good success. It's called Triphala. It's a 3-fruit extract from India, and it's made here they've made it here in the U.S. It's organic. It's just an alternative for people. Or there's like solutions. They can just add a little bit to water. It's not an alcoholic cocktail, but it just spikes, the body to help make what they need to. Because a lot of times our digestion just gets hacked by candida or the pathogenic bacteria, and it's just a temporary thing. It's not something that's permanent. The pancreas
right.
It's not half dead, but it's just hacked. They're these little organisms. They love to stay in our body. They want somewhere warm, and they don't want to move. So they'll, institute some constipation or just reduce our body temperature. Our pancreatic enzymes actually work at their best at 37 degrees Celsius or 38.6 Fahrenheit, our body temperature. But if they hack our gut, then our thyroid goes kaput, and our subsequently adrenals and thyroid and body temperatures drop. And this makes it a lot more conducive for these critters like yeast and pathogens to grow more. They like an alkaline environment as well. So by adding acidity, whether it's through apple cider vinegar, that's a mild way, but it may hurt people who have like H. pylori or they're undergoing gastritis until that gets cleared up. But once there's a healthier mucosa, you can add some of these and help reduce the pathogen load in that way. And I like Triphala because it's more gentle. It's been used for centuries. It's a little bitter. It also binds excess things, like helps with detox a little for me, for Herxheimer. Okay, so you put up page 3. And this is qPCR, so we get a really accurate number, a count, a quantification of the relative quantities and exact count of what's in the gut for 24 species. Most of these are considered part of the ancestral core that are studied, and I think are very important. They're considered core by a number of gut microbiome researchers. So Genova has harvested these, and it's easy and great to compare when you're looking at time sampling, you know, initially and then 2 months later, 4 months later after some dietary changes and probiotics. So if you look here, you'll see a high amount of Bacteroides, just they're totally high. And they're probably not where they're supposed to be in the upper gut, especially with her complaints of leaky gut and Hashimoto's, which is a permeability condition where things in the gut, food, undigested food, and bacteria and pathogens are also spilling into the blood supply and then causing this counter attack by our immune system. And these autoantibodies usually bind to something, such as the thyroid, which then leads to Hashimoto's. So the goal is to lower the attack and lower the antibodies. And the best way to do it is seal the gut and then somehow deal with the antibodies by boosting immunity and clearing the diet and all these things that we do for permeability and dysbiosis. So I go down a little further, and you can see the what is high is Escherichia coli, E. coli. This is pretty common after antibiotics, and it's really selective to grow. It's just a bloom because they share DNA a lot and they get resistance. You can see here the B. longum is high. I actually, you know, I don't know how accurate that this is for Genova.
Is that the PCR or the stool culture you're looking at?
Well, yeah, it's moldy tough and it's supposed to be very accurate, but I've seen animal is high and then longum's low, and then it'll still show up here on like either ubiome. And you know, ubiome's not really reliable, but B. longum and animals, their sequences are pretty well known. So I kind, and you know, usually dysbiosis is still there. So I suspect this is not really longum actually. Okay, and then you'll see the Methanobrevi and Archaebacteria is very low. Whenever something's below detection levels, it's usually not so great. And you can see the Fusobacterium is also extremely high, like the E. coli. Fusobacterium loves to adhere right to the mucosa, and it's highly associated with colorectal cancer, adenoma, and colitis, like IBD conditions. So in this case, there's probably a lot of mucus being secreted. Surprisingly, the gut inflammatory markers like eosinophil and SIGA were not high on this lab study, but you can see here the Akkermansia is not designated as high, but you can see it's on the upper end of the green spectrum, and it's probably considered high. If you look on the first page, the Verruca microbialis, which holds Akkermansia in the grouping, is a big chunk relatively to the normal one, the purple bar up there at the top. So this is a great pictorial that I love. And yeah, I wouldn't mind if ubiome did it too, because it can really tell you kind of, oh, you know, what's really going on there. The Fuso, that navy line is huge, and that's really indicative that, you know, some abnormal process is going. And, you know, even though we see all these abnormalities, usually we see changes within a month or two. When we repeat the Genova 2200, it's very easy to shift out. People feel better within a week or two, even days. But it's nice to see this snapshot. And it correlates really well with symptom improvement. Now on the last page, page 4, we see the culture. So this is what a comprehensive digestive stool analysis also does. Great Plains offers it, and Doctors Data, the CDSA. So this is added. This did not exist a year ago, and I'm so glad they added this because so many of our most nasty bugs need to be cultured to be seen. So for Carol, usually aggressive yeast I never see grow out, but here we can actually see the yeast. Is that what you notice also, Christopher?
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite rare for the yeast to show up on a stool culture, and normally I'm reliant on the organic acids to show Candida as diarabinitol. But I use the Genova organic acids test, and I understand that Great Plains they do more in-depth testing in the yeast section, and you might find out more from that test, but it's not something I've looked at so far.
Yeah, I run either. It kind of depends on insurance.
Right.
There's a couple out of network that Genova just won't do, like Aetna. Yeah, Aetna and Humana. So then I go with Great Plains. But also, if I'm looking more in depth at yeast and Candida, because there's only one marker on the organics and only three, I think, for the optimal NutriVal, I go with the Great Plains if I'm looking in more depth at 9 markers. Or if someone's low carb, that hides a lot of yeast and won't show up yet. We want to track it so we can know that it's getting better and then it's going into remission. Okay, so this is a great page. We can see here the E. coli, it correlates actually with the qPCR. This is unusual. Often the culture won't. So it just means probably there's a ton. You get it both on qPCR testing, and it's also growing out, which could be a mix of kind of, supposedly the culture is supposed to be good E. coli. So I'm not sure what to make of it, but it could be a combination, or there's just a lot growing in the upper gut. And the lacto here is 3+, but when we go back, it's on the yellow, almost red side. So again, I don't know what to make out of it here. Hardly any is picked up on qPCR, but they're growing out a ton. And, you know, again, it's probably a not great, it's probably a really rigorous strain. It's probably just growing all over. And here the bifidobacteria is 2+. But I love this part. These are the potential pathogens. They put NP, not pathogenic, but I think it just depends on context. You know, if there's no good guys, then this is going to be probably a bad guy that's surviving.
Okay. And then what do you make of the parasitology?
So, I mean, some of these opportunistic pathogens are as bad as parasites. So they probably co-infect along with this rare trophozoite, Trichomonas hominis. It's a lot like blasto and other protozoa. It could probably be picked up anywhere, you know, from a salad, from a fantastic restaurant, traveling, hiking, exposure to lakes, and camping. Do you see this? I haven't seen this one yet.
No, I've never seen. So I've run, you know, at least 400 of these stool analyses, and I've never seen this bug. And I believe it goes under another name beginning with P. This might be the old name, but yeah, I just know it's a protozoan parasite with flagella, and that's all I know about it. And that's the weird and wonderful thing about these stool tests is I think that the microbiologist doesn't really know what they're going to see until they start looking, you know. So, but we know a bunch of the herbs, they work really well against a bunch of these different protozoan organisms, and the reason I know that is because I get people to redo the test after they've done some treatment, and the results almost come back without the parasite. So, and at that stage, the person's nearly almost feeling better as well. So if this was my test result, I absolutely would take some herbs to get rid of this thing. It could also be indicative of something else, right? So the microbiologist has found this weird T. hominis, but maybe there's Entamoeba histolytica hiding there too, and those guys tend to like to hang out together, but a limitation of the test means that they've only seen the one.
Yeah, the testing is not always accurate. They go into cysts and they can hibernate, and you know, there's layers of pathogens I found.
So what do you think about, so Carol had a specific question. So clearly she's already working with a doctor that ordered this test, and the doctor is suggesting a prolonged course of antibiotics. Is that right? Did I read that correctly? I'm pretty sure.
Antibiotics. I mean, even with blasto, and a lot of doctors would treat with mega antibiotics, triple antibiotics. I found really good clearance with just the herbals that we commonly use, and then combining with you know, a couple of things, and targeting yeast. So the funny thing about yeast is that Candida is 10 to 100, actually 100 times bigger than bacteria, and probably 10 times bigger than most protozoa. So if you're looking at this like scale. And now it's actually commonly known that H. pylori loves to hide in yeast, and that's why it's so hard to get rid of and eradicate. There's huge relapse rates of 80–90%, even after double antibiotics and triple therapy.
I believe that, who was it? Carol?
Yes.
Wait, no, never mind. Sorry. I was going to offer a little bit more information, but thinking of a different patient. Sorry.
Okay, jump in later. Sure.
Okay.
Harold did want more specific thoughts, but you know, I'm not a doctor and I don't diagnose, and I would love to, you know, answer more questions and you know, help provide some thoughts on the clinical side. So I can share with you what has worked. You know, combining different things. The thing with parasites and even some of the pathogenic bacteria we're finding is that they love to hibernate. They go through phases of growth and then pulling back. So it's necessary to pulse treatments and reevaluate, and also look at where they hibernate, where they like to find seclusion and you know, some respite from all the tax that we give it. So one thing is Candida, and we already know there's Rhodotorula as well. And some of these are probably a little slow-growing versions, the Rhodotorula, and we want to have a good plan of attack, which would include squeezing these squeezing these fungi out, along with potential bacteria, pathogens, and the protozoa.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll be a big fail. A lot of these may relapse, and that's probably why modern medicine may find, you know, a 3-month course of antibiotics is more effective and less relapse, because they are trying to just annihilate everything. But the problem with that is it actually will select for bad yeast, and there'll be a bigger problem later down the line. And yeast are associated with everything, you know, reduction in immunity and autoimmune disorders, and then even cancer 20, 30, 40 years down the line. So I understand your hesitancy, and there are definitely different solutions available, I think, which benefit the microbiota long term.
Okay. Well, so we move on to Clara.
Okay.
Let's see if I can work the magic here and put Clara's biome up.
So for someone left off the table, I wouldn't be surprised that the Hashimoto's will get a lot better after you address the gut issues, and hopefully you'll see a lot of changes: mind, skin, body, cravings, body fat.
And this is the one that I was just going to add. Clara and Octavio are a pair.
Okay.
And they are working with one of the Nourish Balance Thrive affiliate practitioners.
Awesome. So Clara had the uBiome, and Christopher was awesome to put the alpha diversity score. So that's nice to track. Unfortunately, uBiome changed their data reporting, so everyone has diversity now.
Yeah.
But
So
diversity, we saw a lot of pathogens in high diversity. So really, the diversity score is kind of useless. I don't really put much, you know, merit on it, but it's fun, you know, if you're into numbers.
Right. Yeah, we should say something about that, the way that uBiome changed the test recently, right? So suddenly everybody's tree just appeared to be a lot smaller. And it seems like uBiome decided that actually they didn't really know the species level data as well as they thought, and so they stopped reporting it. And so if you could imagine, like if you were looking at a phylogenetic tree, this hierarchy of organisms, then maybe you would have all dogs, and then underneath that you would have Labradors and Alsatians and Poodles. Well, uBiome decided they didn't know whether it was an Alsatian or a Poodle, so they started reporting everything as a dog. So that's why the tree got smaller, and this change happened about maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, actually, like I think within a day or two after our first inaugural webinar.
So yeah, maybe a bit longer than that. And then so all the trees, and so accordingly, I made a change to my software that reports this alpha diversity. So generally, more diversity is better, we think. But then uBiome changed their algorithm or the way that their test works, and so the diversity got much lower. But yeah, so who knows? Eventually, hopefully, it'll become more stable the way that they do the test, and then it'd be easier for us to track progress and see which way the diversity is going.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's good if it's more accurate.
Right.
we knew is only like 30–60% accurate before for species level data. The genera data is pretty reliable. Phylum, order, all very reliable. I think it gets more reliable when you go up the hierarchy. And we never really focused on genera too much. I like seeing it, however, when we look at the nodes, and it's too bad they pulled off some of the nodes for the ones that I really like to look at, like Roseburia. But they do report their inulina venerans. That's a highly indicative biomarker of a healthy gut, and still they're able to report that, and probably in the past it was also accurate, and it's only a fraction of what healthy guts have, and so that I'm glad they at least were able to keep that. And I mainly look at bifido and a couple other ancestral microbiota. Those we can still rely on, and they're there.
And those are absent. So just a little bit of history about Carol. I read her health assessment questionnaire, and I see an awful lot of these for the athletes that I work with.
Okay.
And
Claire's an athlete too?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know that, but she looks like she's doing really well here. When I look at the answers to the questions, she looks like she's doing great. I mean, so that's something I'm always thinking about with these test results is, although the gut is extremely important, it also matters how much sleep you're getting and what you're eating and how much stress you're under and a variety of other things. So that's what the health assessment questionnaire sets out to try and answer those questions. And Carol looks like she's doing great. She has no GI symptoms. She has refreshing sleep. Her only complaint, it would seem, that was she would like to lose a little bit of weight. And so I'm wondering, is there anything you can see here in the ubiome that would suggest that maybe she wouldn't be as lean as she could be? It's a difficult question, if not impossible.
This is what I deal with all day. Don't worry. So Akkermansia and Bifidolongum, they're the two main key bacteria in the human gut microbiota. They're probably the main parts of the ancestral core, actually. They anchor the whole ancestral core. So when I see them missing, both are missing.
Both are missing.
Yeah, the huge branch, they're just completely gone. And that's not an alpha diversity thing. It's not anything. Clara reports she's had all different kinds of infections, not a lot, more than average, actually lower than average, but she's had 5 courses of antibiotics, and her appendix was taken out at one point. So when you look at Akkermansia and the studies for it, it's found depleted or significantly low in all the digestive conditions, and then if we do actually the autoimmune studies and what we see, Christopher, you and I, it's low in everybody actually, but in appendicitis, for sure, it's low. And then it's particularly low in patients who undergo surgery for it. So is it a part of the disease? Is it part of the pathophysiology? I think so. When you're losing part of your gut and you've got disruption and all kinds of dysbiosis and lacking a lot of the commensals that protect the gut lining, and Akkermansia is one that lives on the gut lining, then you're having this. There's this major disruption going on, and a low amount of it is definitely a sign that it's not the gut has probably a lot of problems. On the flip side, if people are secreting a lot of mucus, and we have some cases of that, then Akkermansia is off the chart. So there's evidence that shows that Akkermansia, which loves to eat our mucus, it survives on that between meals. If it's in a disease state where there's a lot of inflammation, like the SIGA, what we see on ANOVA testing, if that's elevated or other signs of gut inflammation are going on or what people report, and we see high Akkermansia, to me, and Bifido is missing and a couple other good strains are missing, that signals to me that there's a lot of inflammation going on. And what I see is when people implement any kind of gut health healing program, these all normalize within a month or 2 or 3. It doesn't take long at all. So they can start probiotics or some safe prebiotics. Some you probably don't want to take, but safe ones would be like arabinogalactan, which selectively feeds Bifido at longum, not the starch-eating ones, which are damaging and for the gut lining. And acacia is usually really safe. And maybe there's 1 or 2 others like MCP, modified citrus pectin. But when there's a lot of things growing in the upper gut, you want to avoid certain fiber because they will feed whatever's growing there, whether they're good or bad, and that will just keep cycling dysbiosis. So avoiding fiber for some individuals, if there's a lot of gut dysbiosis going on in the upper gut, would be a good idea for just like a month or 2 or 3, depending on the person, and then instituting like a good plan after that to feed what's anchoring there.
So I mean, Clara doesn't report any kind of GI symptoms whatsoever, no bloating, no gas, no problems like that. So I mean, that would be a fun and non-invasive and fairly risk-free experiment to do, right? So take some of those prebiotic powders that you mentioned. What was that?
Arabinogalactan is really safe.
Arabinogalactan. I've not taken that one. Acacia.
Yeah.
And
good for IBS symptoms, but for actually any disorder I've seen, it seems pretty safe. Yeah, those two are the most safest ones. I would avoid psyllium. I would avoid inulin for sure, because inulin is so great. It kind of feeds the whole gut, but it will feed, you know, some pathogens as well until you know what's going on. And unfortunately on ubiome, that's what Clara did, only ubiome. We don't know what's culturing out. She probably does have some nasties that would culture out, but we can't see them, you know. But for sure, when bifido and akkermansia are gone, there's something nasty that's going to culture out. But there's low numbers, and by the time it hits the colon, which is the last meter and a half, they just don't grow out. Especially if someone has a good diet and they don't have a lot of symptoms. Probably their short-chain fatty acids are killing them, or there's enough of the good bacteria like the Bacteroides and some good butyrate producers, you know, that would minimize these populations, so we don't see them coming out unless they're cultured.
Okay.
So she has quite a number of sulfur gas producers, and you know, sulfur gas, if it's excessive and there's not enough good bacteria to eat up excess sulfur gas, it can be toxic on the mucosal lining. So she had Disolvo vibrio. It was almost at 1%. So again, 1%, that exceeds bifido and akkermansia, because both bifidolongum and akkermansia, in a healthy gut, that they would make up between 0.5 to even 2 to 5% of the gut. So that to me is a signal there's probably some silent dysbiosis going on, even though she doesn't report digestive issues. Megasphaera also is a known pathogen, you know, opportunistic. Yeah. It's usually not a good sign when I see that. Same with Catanobacteria mitsuoka. Blaudia is usually good, but she also was complaining of some weight issues, like she wanted to lose body fat. And Blaudia, depending on the strain you're talking about, but too much or certain strains are associated with insulin resistance. It makes it really tough to burn body fat. So that one would be nice to see it knocked down a little bit. And her Roseburia was kind of on the low side. It was only 5%, 5.5%, and it only had 0.0132% of the inulinovirins strain. So by boosting that, after, you know, healing the gut lining a little bit, I think you will easily see fat loss if you're interested, Clara.
Interesting. So that so Akkermansia we said was missing. That one you can't buy as a probiotic, but bifidobacteria you certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have I've been working and using the custom probiotics. I've been combining a couple of their bottles, but now I have one that combines two of their really great ones. And we don't have a D-lactate test on her, like, you know, normally we would run an organic acids or organics, and we would see the D-lactate. And almost on everybody, it's medium level or high. So for sure, there's, you know, I would presume there's some histamine and D-lactate producers here. That would prevent that, you know, they're causing inflammation and preventing easy body fat loss. And it would be nice, you know, to use a really good quality histamine degrading kind of probiotic. So the one I have is called Bifido Maximus. My kids are on it, my dog's on it, we're all doing really well. And I noticed big changes after I added it, and it just made fat loss a lot more easier. So Clara in her gut has 2.2% bifidobacterium, but none of these are the B. longum, according to this ubiome. And I'm not surprised at all. This is commonly what I see. So these are probably all the starch eaters. So, you know, this is why for some people when they cut out starches and go just slightly lower carb, like half or even lower carb, they see huge changes because you're squeezing out these more toxic starch-eating bifidobacteria. And they're just associated with more insulin resistance and dysbiosis and probably permeability if we test it out. So we can squeeze these out and use probiotics just to bring them out. And then later, once they anchor, you can, after some dysbiosis is cleared up, there's certainly a lot of prebiotics, which is fiber, to help feed them and keep them there. Also a great diet, like lentils, onions, carrots, any of the non-starchy roots, and then some of the higher cooked-resistant starch sources, like beans and lentils are great. You don't need a lot, actually, to see huge differences. So it's great. It's easy to resurrect akkermansia. So I had some cases that I talked about at the Paleo Effects talk. If you don't find the slides on my website, you know, email me. I can send it to you. You know, 2 cases and mine I went over. You know, just by targeting the gut healing aspects, you can easily resurrect akkermansia. One friend in he's an athlete. He went from 0, and within 5.5 months went all the way up to 1.17% very easily. And then Eli, he had a minimal amount, which was good, and then that also increased quite significantly. I think 2 or 3 times. I forgot. So definitely we can bring in Akkermansia, and hopefully we'll have a probiotic someday. I wouldn't be sad if I was involved with that. Maybe we'll I think you have a lot. We'll take some of yours, Christopher.
I wouldn't recommend that. Okay.
Daughters, we could combine it. We'll have a hybrid bionic blend.
Yeah, my daughter's doing great.
Yeah, she's doing awesome. She's so cute too.
Okay, should we move on to Derek?
Okay.
I think maybe Amelia, can you hear me? I think you might do a better job of introducing Derek than I would. You've been talking to him more recently than I have.
Yeah, so I've been working with Derek for a while, and he, he came to us with some general weight and health issues, and we did some blood tests and we did some stool tests. And his initial blood test said that he was in iron overload, which we were going to treat.
Oh, okay.
And then what ended up happening is then, we got this stool test just to make sure there wasn't anything else that we needed to deal with. And it came up that he had this blood in his stool. So what I did is I sent him to his physician, and they did a colonoscopy. They found a large polyp. And this is, a middle-aged man, probably 30 to 40 years old. So he did have a large polyp. That was removed, and we're still kind of getting him back to, to optimum performance. But one of, some of his concerns were, especially with, the polyps possibly leading to colon cancer. Kind of what can he do? With the testing that he has. We obviously don't have a ubiome. What are things that you can recommend to kind of protect against things like colon cancer?
Okay. Yeah, I've looked into this a little bit because anyone with severe gut inflammation, colon inflammation, IBD or IBS, they have a much higher risk of colorectal cancer. For IBD, they nailed it to like 5 or even 20-fold higher increase of cancer. But there are many things that I believe can be done. Both Christopher and I, we do a little bit of nutrigenomics. I love looking at someone's 23andMe and seeing what we can do, in terms of MTHFR and a couple other risk factors that we're born with. Usually it's not one variant that makes a difference, but a multiple number. You can have steroid synthesis off, so and detox off, so you can't get rid of a lot of xenoestrogens like pesticides. They're really feminizing, and female hormones can be like a growth enhancer. And then there's also all the gut ones, and because when the gut is permeable, then we're more insulin resistant, and insulin is a growth factor, so that grows cancer as well. So there are many things actually someone can approach trying to reduce cancer risk. So as I mentioned, the Fusobacterium in the other case, we can do many things. Some studies show the probiotics really help to reduce this, and I see it go down all the time, and it's not really a big deal at all. And a lot of people silently don't even know they have Fusobacterium growing on their gut mucosa in high numbers, which is contributing to permeability, gut inflammation, local and systemic inflammation. But just by introducing probiotics, try to get one that you're not allergic to. If someone's had any history of strep infection, I'd recommend no strep-containing probiotics. They just seem to confer some kind of growth pattern. They may be growing themselves, and they're kind more. So I've actually had a couple cases. I don't recommend VSL or one called Elixir. It's a high dose, but I actually have had 2 autoimmune cases come out of use of those. Combined with other things like potato starch or just so I actually don't I think going back using functional medicine, if you go back and ask someone's history with upper respiratory infections or strep, it's probably safer to just avoid certain things so that they don't cross react and cause inflammation.
And so we have him on your bionic fiber with Clear Labs Factor 4.
Okay. So
Is
6
that an appropriate treatment?
Yeah, I think that's great. The 4 is it's a kind of a lower dose of bifido. So now we have many strains that are much higher. Renew has one, I have one, Bifidomax, and there's many others out there. So I think looking at his testing and seeing it come back up would be great. So there's one study I'll put out after in the post-webinar notes. I forgot who wrote it, but they didn't have a control group, so it's not a really super great study. But we know in healthy control guts, bifidolongum is quite high, even 1%. In Italy, it's even 11%. Bifidolongum is the majority gut resident in the stool microbiota when they do 16S rRNA analysis. In colorectal cancer or in patients with adenoma, they found B. longum is only 7% instead of the dominant, 40, 50, 60% strain. And at the mucosa level, in healthy guts, it's actually 70% of the mucosa-associated microbiota, the MAM. But in sick individuals like colorectal cancer cases and adenoma and diverticulitis, as well as IBD, the relative percent goes way down. Instead, they have the starch-eating bifidobacterium, like Anomalous or Adolescensis. So even though some of these are used as probiotics, doesn't mean they're actually ideal for human use or for certain disease states. And I would actually avoid them because most people already have too much, and you don't want to add more. So I would find a probiotic that someone tolerates well and shoot for something that's kind of baby-like or like mom's milk. So the bifidolongum is the one I look at and I've used a lot, and it seeds really well from any of the brands I just mentioned. And then you want perhaps look at the overall composition, see if you have histamine producers that culture out. Usually people do. And then yeast. So in IBD and colorectal cancer, the microbiome is really exploding. The studies that illuminate all the fungi there. So we have good fungi and bad fungi. After antibiotics, we get a lot of the bad pathogenic aggressive fungi. So in every program, and I know Christopher does this too, we want to look at some of the Candida programs. And the great thing is a lot of our antiparasite regimens tackle viruses, fungi, and many other things that are in the gut. So they're just vastly better than an antibiotic, which targets only bacterial pathogens. But they also inadvertently knock out the good bacteria that we need to protect and defend our gut lining. Mm-hmm. They also make vitamins for us. A lot of people, they just don't feel well. They don't sleep well. They're not making 40 of the neurotransmitters that we would normally make if we're healthy. And they don't get vitamin K2. All these things are related to our missing microbes, the commensals that make all these things. Oh, that's a great article.
Yeah, so this is one I just stumbled across yesterday, and this is some high quality science here. This is a double-blinded crossover trial with a washout period where they showed that RS4, so a type of fiber, could mitigate the so I'm not familiar with this compound. It sounds the deoxyguanosine. That tells me it's a breakdown product of the guanosine of DNA.
Yeah, I like the 8 DOH DG. It's used in the optimal NutriVal. It's really great for people with a background of
right. But in this particular study, so they had positive outcomes by giving people fiber. And the fiber was RS4, which is actually a synthetic form of.
Yeah, but it's like cooked. It's like you're having like a super amped up lentil there.
Okay, so we know that there's some problems with the raw potato starch, which is RS2, right? So the RS4 is okay.
It actually lowers acetate and populations that make acetate. So they actually lower Akkermansia and bifidolongum, and then they raise E. coli. Several studies show now it totally feeds hemolytic E. coli and both good E. coli but hemolytic E. coli, which every dysbiotic gut appears to have. Mm-hmm. And it hits Clostridium. We don't see that. It's hard to see and it's not cultured right now, but a lot of the symptoms people report are the neurotoxic symptoms coming from Clostridium. And we don't want to feed Clostridium. We want the good Clostridium, not the bad Clostridium.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen this article. It's it mimics real food in a way. I don't personally think red meat's that bad for most individuals, but if you have a CBS variant, this goes back to nutrigenomics, the sulfur in meat is a little difficult to handle for some people. But for most individuals who have just normal CBS variants, meat is awesome. And when you have the right bacteria in the gut, they quench all the sulfur that comes out of meat degradation and the nitrosamines.
Right. So yeah, so Derek, know that the fiber can certainly help with the risk of colorectal cancer, and we do have some science to support that statement.
Yeah, so the organics doesn't have the 8-OH-DG, but you may want to switch to NutriVal or the optimal NutriVal, and you'll get the cancer marker, and then really great to track.
Okay. So let's move on to Laura. And again, it might be better for you to introduce Laura, Amelia, because I think you've talked to her more recently than me.
Yeah, I spoke with her yesterday. Laura's a patient that we've had for quite some time. She did some testing about a year ago. We found a parasite, and she was able, stated that she followed her protocol, but it was a little unsupervised as she got the herbs from a different source. So everybody can get their herbs wherever they want to, but sometimes it's just easier when I know the quality of what we're giving. So anyway, she did the treatment, she did the protocol. Never really got a ton better. Some of her main complaints were fatigue and some autoimmune skin issues. She'd been relatively compliant with the diet, with some lapses off the diet, just random lapses, and and then recently she's come back saying that things never really got better, and we never got a confirmation of, parasite eradication. So now we're looking at her blood tests. She's got some low proteins. She's got some gastric inflammation going on, and, some possible adrenal dysfunction. So, the plan from here is to do a little bit of further investigation. I've recommended a 401 pathogen screen, just to see, of any big bugs that we're dealing with, and what would you kind of recommend moving forward?
Oh, you guys have. I think Laura's gotten a really comprehensive strategic plan. And I do hope the best quality products are found. I'm really careful. I try to use what I think are the best and aren't contaminated. Many times the brand makes a big difference, because some may come from third world countries and there's no third-party testing. And I used to live in China, and I know a lot of things are just adulterated. They try to make things way more. They add mercury or lead or whatever is heavier. So you have to be really careful, because you don't want to end up with like a heavy mercury case or a heavy metal case later. I love the approach of trying to support the adrenals, because we can't heal the gut, which is immense. Our small intestines alone are 4 times our height, and then the colon is 1.5 meters. And it's just impossible to heal this if we don't have appropriate adrenaline support and regulation, and cortisol regulation. Cortisol, if it's too high, causes ulcers, and there's just no way you're going to heal dysbiosis if cortisol is excessive. But if it's also too low, we actually need an adequate amount of steroids to regulate healing and immunity. So that's why some people just never get better, or they get surgery where the cortisol surges, and they're just never the same. They're flat. The adrenals are flatlined, and there's no extra healing. So boosting or regulating or supporting adrenals in all ways possible is really ideal. So for an athlete, they actually probably need to take a holiday from endurance exercise, I think, temporarily, until the adrenals get a little better, because each time they're pushing it, they're eking, some life out of the adrenals. But even for, multitasking moms, extra, activities for school or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, all these things actually take a toll, and it's difficult. Adequate looking at meditation and ways to reduce stress load, and definitely herbals for adrenal glands, drops, and I love a lot of sublingual tablets for DHE and pregnenolone. There's also creams available, but supporting the adrenals is number one, and that will help with fatigue and healing. So I love the pictures that Laura posted for skin. skin and gut mucosa lining are almost identical in my mind. They have origins through embryonic tissue, and so when we have a really great gut mucosa level, we have really great skin. So on the testing, there was a parasite found that I wasn't really familiar with, Chilomastix mesni. So we hope this is eradicated in a very gentle way, and to crowd out. I can see Christopher putting it up there, because any kind of parasite will degrade the small intestines, and this is where we have permeability and junk will enter our bloodstream. So healing the gut lining by sealing it as tight as we can and only having selective permeability is the utmost priority for health. Preventing cancer risk, preventing premature mortality and morbidity. We want to support as much as we can the tightness of the upper gut and colon as well. So it's also notable, Laura spoke about several strep throat incidences. Again, I'd avoid anything with strep. So any of the bifidobacteria long-own products, as long as they don't have strep, would be really great to help bring on and crowd a lot of these pathogens out and tighten up. As the probiotics come through the gut, they may not even seed, but ideally we want some of them to seed, especially if they're part of the core. But when they come through, they actually tighten the gut as they go, and that's why I think I see so much results when the higher doses are used, like 200 billion, 300 billion, or even 400, 500 billion, when we can achieve it with a high-quality product. So that's something to consider. And I know she has a lot of different intolerances, so it makes it hard. Laura reported headaches with glutamine. For a lot of people, and maybe they have MTHFR or certain variants, glutamine just doesn't work out. So then I go with NAG and acetyl glucosamine, which comes from seafood sources. So hopefully you're not allergic to seafood. It also comes from insects. Crickets are a wonderful source too. And if you bake it, they break down a little bit, so they're a little more digestible. So I was trying to sneak some cricket flour into scones. It actually works better with tiger nut flour if you're baking, because tiger nut flour is already kind of sandy. So Laura, there's different ways to approach this for sure. Did you have some additional thoughts, Christopher?
Yeah, exactly. So extreme fatigue, I'm always thinking about energy production, and you can see here from Laura's organic acids test, adipate and superate buildup. So this is going to mean you can't burn fat, and you can take carnitine as a supplement, which I believe Laura is. But you have to ask the question. So your body should be able to synthesize this nutrient carnitine fairly easily from 2 amino acids, and if that's not happening, you have to ask yourself why. And again, we can see a lot of bacterial overgrowth on the organic acid. So this is not a test that looks at the bacteria directly, but rather this organic acid, which is a breakdown product produced by the bacteria. So it's an indirect surrogate marker.
This is a text, and even though for clients we're going to see other cases where the organics is only middle green, not high, very high like this, it's still bacterial overgrowth. A lot of times, people are on a really fantastic diet or a low carb diet, or they're taking prebiotics and probiotics, so they don't get a high level, but it's moderate, and it's moderate. It's enough to indicate that the bacteria are still overgrowing, and contributing to this permeability and the subsequent clogging of all our cellular pathways and things. And we don't see the yeah, there's like 7 other markers that we know of that are indicative of yeast and candida overgrowth. But so I look at if one is negative, then I go with another test sometimes. But for Laura, she's textbook.
Right. Yeah, and so these test results are a year old now, and so whatever you've done over the past 8, 9, 10 months, you've got to go back and do the test again and make sure it worked, right? So it does occasionally happen. I saw one this week, where the person's done a protocol and the parasite is still there for whatever reason, and you can't mess with that. You need to figure that out and make another plan if plan A didn't work.
Right. So on the testing, I didn't see the biohealth unless I missed it, because they may or may not have picked up the E. coli, but without a doubt, high on the GIFX, it was E. coli.
There it is.
So this is usually the resistant one, the antibiotic resistant one, and they just flare. They are actually resistant to even our botanicals, and they're so ancestral. Even curcumin doesn't necessarily touch it. Sometimes I show Allicin, garlic will, but I've actually had cases they fail Allicin. So this is where the phage therapy can help. They target resistant E. coli and only the aggressive ones, not healthy probiotic E. coli. But on her culture, she had Enterobacter closae. The cell wall of Enterobacter closae is very interesting. It's part of the family of gamma proteobacteria, just like E. coli, and they share a lot of similar, strains, characteristics for resilience in our gut and robustness in our gut. But the cell wall of Enterobacter closae is so toxic. It's 100 to 1,000 times more toxic than other gram-negatives in the gut lining. And it may not be killing someone who has it, but it causes immense disruption at the gut microbiota level and the mucosa level, and by causing leakage when they enter our bloodstream, they just flare all the NF-kappa B and other inflammatory cascades. So by lowering, addressing the groupie strep that grew out, addressing very high levels of other strep, and the staphylococcus. So staphylococcus probably is translocating and affecting skin. It's normally a skin microbe. It doesn't really belong in high numbers in our gut. The candida also is really commonly implicated with eczema, psoriasis, acne, any kind of skin condition, because it loves to translocate and then go to our skin and cause all kind of havoc. And some of these pathogens we don't even know yet, but for sure H. pylori is already known, but probably they like to hide in a big old bubble called candida or some other fungi. So they have places to hibernate, and it takes we don't want to blast them forever for months and months and months, but a safe route is some pulsing. I love that approach, and then dietary and using more natural things, because they have ways of working that we don't fully understand yet, and they're not so they're definitely not as toxic as antibiotics, or they wouldn't grow the fungi that we're trying to deal with. So also poor Laura, the gut, had fusobacterium. And again, that's something I easily see shift out. And the Akkermansia was super high, and probably is, to me, an indication that there's a lot of mucus being secreted and histamine related to that. So sometimes our gut is kind of like our nose. Someone may or may not have symptoms of seasonal allergy or rhinitis or allergies, but there's this drip, drip, drip going on in the gut, and it feeds, for some people, some strains that become sort of toxic, that like Akkermansia. You see how it's high? So that's not an indication of a great thing, because you see high amounts of some of the pathogenic strains, particularly Fusobacterium, which is a very, it actually doesn't really belong in healthy guts at all. I usually see 0 or low amounts. It doesn't register. Yeah, and then on the culture, there are, on the culture, you're always going to see 1 or 2 things grow out, but when you see more than 1, that's something to indicate there's disruption that can be changed. So also, if Laura has the adrenal issue, might look at body temperature and thyroid, make sure those are getting addressed.
Okay.
Yeah. And die-off. So maybe if Laura tried different treatments, if she didn't keep in touch, the die-off can be pretty bad for people. So then titrating back, using low doses, taking some chelators that not only disrupt biofilms, but will bind up bacterial toxins and fungi toxins. So, some really great binders or ways to deal with Herxheimer and reactions of, when the bacteria and fungi are lysing and causing this kind of reaction going on that feels like fatigue and flu-like symptoms, is to use a binder like clay or charcoal. I like some fiber, non-soluble fiber, if they can tolerate, like MCP, modified citrus pectin. But even Triphala is a chelator. So for people with iron overload, it's actually super great for that. But Triphala also can help with detox reactions, and usually it's pretty tolerated well. It's just a little bitter, it's something an acquired taste. But I've been using it now for a couple months. It's actually I kind of crave it. My body kind of craves it. It has a lot of tannins, just like red wine, but I wouldn't recommend red wine.
Okay. Right, well, let's move on to Mike. So Mike has thrown you a curveball with a skin biome, I believe. Is that right, Amelia?
Yeah, so I addressed the issue that, Dr. Lou, it's not necessarily in Dr. Lou's wheelhouse for the skin microbiome.
Yeah.
So he added the information, added it it's there. So, but he understands that, you kind of, you specialize, in the heart of the body, in the GI system.
Without a doubt, yeah, I couldn't make much. I did look at the skin biome. I didn't get the species. I wish later, if you want to send it to me and just send me the species from your ubiome data, that would be great. I'll take a look at it. I only saw the overall. But for sure, when E. coli is involved and there's dysbiosis in the gut and some indication of yeast, because the D-arabinitol was high on the organics, there's some yeast overgrowth. For sure, there's like translocation of all these things going to the skin and then causing lots of havoc and inflammation, localized inflammation. So again, we see E. coli here in Mike's case. And again, when we are able to target E. coli using various botanicals and the prephage, the microbes love playing something called musical chairs. Like as soon as one aggressive, pathogen is moved out, something really fast is going to move in. And usually it's not what you want, not Akkermansia, not Elongum. So it really behooves people, if they try the prephage, you must consider the high dose, probiotic that you tolerate, probably strep-free, because I certainly wouldn't want to see like strep moving in there, because it will. It's really fast and not so great for a lot of people. Certainly people who've had strep infections, they probably have autoantibodies already targeted against strep. So I think there's a spectrum. Some people immediately notice an issue, but for others it doesn't occur until like a month or 2 or 3 later, especially if they're not really aware of their body. So I see actually some spectrum cases or ADHD, adult ADHD, and almost every case involves strep. So here we had Mike also had data from the ubiome, October, just a few months ago. And it was a number that I'm not really, I don't often see, but the strep was 1.3%, and he reported tonsillitis and ear infections as a child. So, there's Haemophilus also in the gut and strep. These are all upper respiratory bugs. And they just really don't belong in our gut, but they contribute to health and disease problems and probably even the skin issues. Strep does live somewhat on the skin as well. So if a phage treatment is used, I think that's wonderful. And if that's the case, then definitely make sure you get like a really great probiotic in there, one that you tolerate well, and even a higher dose, so that when the microbes evacuate an ecological niche, there's good bacteria. There's a high chance. We want to raise the opportunities for them to move in and seed the gut, anchor as well as possible. So his organics was just like all the others we've seen. There were at least 4 markers for bacterial dysbiosis that were either moderately high or super high.
Right. So we can look at, that's the summary page I'm showing you, but you can go down and look at the
Pipurate, you're looking at P-oxyphenyl acetate or benzoate. It's pretty textbook. So even though these are just moderate green, perhaps he was on a lower carb diet, so these weren't flaring. But sometimes it's nice to actually have someone go off the bandwagon and then do a lab test. That's what I do. But it's great to see what really is there. We don't want to be hiding some of these, which are really contributing to the disease, because these tests are already so non-selective and kind of subtle. But anyway, if it's not clear, I can, from symptoms and what we see, if it's just moderately in the green, upper green, it's usually indicative of something going on, even though it doesn't register red, and it's kind of alert. So he had Akkermansia. It was like 0.2393%. That was great, but probably it's not super protective at that level. Again, there was actually really good Roseburia, but the inulinovirine strain, again, was only 0.25, very small portion of the full amount. And then the strep was kind of crazy high, 1.3%, which is a good marker that, there's dysbiosis that could easily be, altered, I think. He reported getting his having an accident. The femur was broken, only H2. He's in the hospital a lot, given a lot of medications. Probably given pain meds. These are all constipating. It changes the gut flora. So all these little events, they add up, and they make they make layers of damage, unless someone's really robust, they're outdoors a lot, and they get really good, flora from around their environment. But for certain things like B. longum, you really can't get anywhere except for a probiotic. We don't drink breast milk as adults, so we don't get it. I hope not. So, some of these that we're supposed to get seeded with at birth does not happen, and then we have all these multiple ways that disrupt it. Okay, anything else I should say about Mike? So he was on prescription, so that's awesome. I would, definitely consider if you're not having problems and it's doing well, continue that for maintenance. But then consider some, variety of other kind of probiotics and different kind of weeding protocols. Okay, should we go to Octavio?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Octavio had a wonderful biohealth. Two things showed up. The Citrobacter was really abundant, and a parasite called Endolimex nana, which was found, the cysts were detected on staining. And he had no organics from September. Again, same thing, fat oxidation was poor, B vitamin demand and use was poor, and adrenals were a little messed up, like homovinylate was off or high. And the glutathione demand was high and not enough, so there was like a need for some N-acetylcysteine and sulfur sources. Okay, so the Citrobacter was high, and fortunately nothing else was found. C. difficile wasn't found, Crypto and Giardia wasn't found, and toxic E. coli weren't found. How did he do with weeding?
He's not actually someone I'm working with, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he's working with one of our practitioners, Toria. Okay. And I haven't heard from him in the chat box. So.
Okay. Yeah, Toria is awesome. And the D-lactate, it's really great to see on this organic. It's an example. Mm-hmm. If the D-lactate's in the moderate green or upper green, I expect a lot of histamine and aggressive opportunistic bacteria. And on his ubiome, he had a ubiome back in October, end of October, and it was really clear there was, some different kind of dysbiotic flora there. It was actually a lot better than some of the others we have seen. The Bacteroides was actually kind of a higher amount, 24%, and the Firmicutes was more moderate, like only 46%. But there was Haemophilus, which I normally don't see on ubiome in healthy guts. And this goes along with some of the things he complained of, like mouth, infection issues, sore throats frequently, asthma. So I share something with Octavio. Our doctor, our dads were physicians, and they mean to do their best. And I like Octavio, I got a lot of antibiotics as well, and it probably contributed to some of the things that I ended up developing later, like autoimmune disease and Hashimoto's and chronic fatigue later. So his main complaint is like skin and acne and some inability to lose weight despite being on very low carb for a year. So a lot of these things, they drain on the adrenals. So again, for fat loss, we want to really support the adrenals, make sure they're bubbly and happy. What affects the adrenals the most is a subclinical infection in our gut, because our gut is meters long in the upper gut, and then again a meter and a half in the lower gut. And if this is not very happy, it super drains the adrenal glands. Our gut takes like 20-30% of our energy source, just like our brain. Our huge human brains take 20% of all our energy source because it's burning all day, all night. And so if there's a subclinical infection going on, such as indicated by the Endolimex and the Citrobacter, Hyomantha citrobacter, and then the Haemophilus and other things seen on the ubiome, the Clostridium was really quite high. It causes a lot of secretes a lot of neuroenterotoxins and neurotoxins. It's hard to combat that until it gets better. And like textbook, other guts testing we were seeing, the Bifido. I think it was missing.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Yeah, and then the Roseburia and Liniverns actually was pretty good. Yeah, I don't see it. And then the Akkermansia, also I think was not there either.
Yeah, it's not there.
not there. Yeah. So there's
I'm
ways
thinking
to course
about the organics as well.
correct.
You can see, if somebody's got a weight loss goal, then obviously at some point you have to oxidize some fat, and
Yeah.
to be deficient in carnitine and in a mild ketosis, this is not a great situation to be in. And when you look at these markers, all of them are pinned. So I would expect to be for carnitine to be a really great choice of supplement for
Yeah.
Octavio.
Yeah. Designs for Health has really great liquids, a little minty. You can really get like some good replenishment. Carnitine is part of every muscle, which is, and it's
Yeah, you
actually
should be able to get some from food.
muscle meat. Yeah, hard muscle. We like to eat organ meats, and that's a great source of carnitine there.
Hmm.
So if the dysbiosis is actually pretty significant, which it sounds like, avoiding certain fiber initially and doing a Genova 2200 so you can see what grows out, or you do a CDSA from Great Plains or Doctor's Data would be great, because then you can kind of see what else you need to target. Because with Endolimax, for sure, there's other things evident, and you didn't see the E. coli, but it's more than likely there. You might want to quantify it, but otherwise, or you can think about some empirical approaches. Also, what was missing is the ruminococcus. There was another eubiome. I don't know if we hit it yet, but the entire arm of ruminococcus under the bigger family, Ruminococcusoi, was gone. Usually I look for Ruminococcus bromai. Like, eubiome is actually pretty good at reporting the species for this, but then we need this to digest starches, cooked starches. So when people are missing it, it's actually very omnivorous. It also eats inulin, it eats oligosaccharides, it eats a lot of things. But we need it. Like, it's like eating a meal without a fork if it's gone, or also the Akkermansia and Bifidolongum, to break down some of the key fibers in the human diet, which is, a lot of cooked stuff that our species become acclimated with, and the gut microbiota adapted to as soon as we started cooking routinely. As scientists estimating that happened about 350,000 years ago. It ties in with our bigger brain and ability to use fats. So if we're missing certain strains, it really, it's helpful to bring them back. But we have to lower the pathogenic load because those prevent a lot of the good ones from flourishing.
So a little information on Octavio. He is doing phase 1 of treatment. So he's addressing his adrenals first.
Yes.
And then in 2 weeks, he will be starting his killing phase.
Great. Okay. Okay, so we have 3 left. Tina, Todd, and Robert. Let's talk about Robert for a minute. So Robert, I actually can I can relate to a lot because I had chronic fatigue for 2 years, and fortunately I was really lucky. A lot of things helped it to reverse. So it's what he stated. He is working with Dr. Lamb for several years on adrenals. Those have all gotten a lot better, but he still complains that sleep is poor. He occasionally has low mood, and there's this tense worriedness that he hasn't been able to get over. So he's been doing on his own an H. pylori regimen, because on testing, BioHealth showed E. coli was very high and a light growth of Candida. Now, actually, on BioHealth, I never see Candida.
No, I never see it either. So I think it must be a lot for it to come out in this little test.
Yeah. So I actually had that too. I had antibiotics when a titanium implant was put in. I used to blame the implant, but now going back, it was probably the antibiotic that, caused this immense flare of chronic fatigue and Candida. So you know what your targets are, I believe. And he had an organic stent in August. The D-arabinitol was super high, almost off the chart. And so it sounds like things are kind of getting better. Just in the moderate green was lactate. So again, you want to consider a good product that is known to degrade histamine. So the custom probiotic and the Bifidomaximus that we have at the Gut Institute, all the strains are very good for supporting histamine-free commensals. And some of the strains actually degrade histamine. So I think this is why it can be so effective for a lot of people. They notice changes within just a few days. And the product we have has been used in many cases of autism, and there's great testimonials on the website from the manufacturer, the custom probiotic one. And these are some of the most disrupted guts that have a lot of parasites, a lot of Candida, and they report a lot of improvements and very little die-off, very little Herxheimer when they're on it. So again, he had at least four markers on organics that indicated bacterial dysbiosis. There was like a moderate high amount of hippurate, again, p-hydroxybenzoate and hydroxyphenylacetate and nidocan. This is sort of textbook. It's like everyone has it. He had an Axis lab from August, which had high, cortisol and low morning DHEA. So hopefully these are all, getting addressed so that the body can heal and the adrenal glands can heal. I'm glad Robert looked at his titers. So in chronic fatigue, not only is there overgrowth of all the bacterial and fungi stuff, the viruses flare. They get activated because immunity, which is 80% of the gut, it totally descends and fails to work. And this correlates with a lot of immune function. There's a lot of great new articles now where IL-10, IL-5, these are all kind of fucked up, and MTHFR is often involved a little bit. I have one of the variants for heterozygous 1298. And so these, when you have a combination of different variants and then these things that occur, there's sort of a storm for chronic fatigue. But these can be, ameliorated with different levels addressed. The viruses. There's a lot of great botanicals that are antiviral. Actually, most of the antiparasitic regimens that we use are antiviral too. So that sometimes people do feel really great on a lot of these. They're like, wow, I don't want to get off of it because you're addressing the virus. And if it's possible, it's even good to just get on a prescription. This is where pharmaceuticals, I believe, have a huge advantage. Famvir, acyclovir, there's appropriate antivirals to address these. And relatively they're safe. They probably do lower our good viruses and good phages, but because chronic fatigue is so severe and it's multi-level damage, these actually do help for a lot of people. So he reports he didn't have Lyme. That's great to rule that out. But there was mono for many years and over 20 years of chronic fatigue reported. So a lot of these are deep-seated co-infections. So it's not going to be overnight, but I believe the approach that works the best is looking at all the different levels and slowly work on them. Do you have some clients, Christopher, that report some onset of chronic fatigue during their athletic career and then they can't shake it?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the fatigue has got to be up there with one of the main complaints, and it's really interesting to me to see somebody with. So I don't normally use this lab. I use BioHealth for the cortisol.
Yeah.
Can you see this adrenal panel right now? No. Here we go. I'll put it up.
Can see it.
And the ranges are clearly different. I'm sure the test works differently too. But it looks like at least one of the cortisol readings is very high, and I never see that.
The immune one are both high, in my opinion, based on their.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting that I only work with athletes and they're all slightly overtrained and have very low cortisol, and here's one that didn't come to me directly and it's high.
Yeah, he's not flatline, so maybe he was flatline. Now it's kind of perked up in the last couple of years addressing it. So good for you, Robert, because that makes a huge difference for healing.
Something else I spotted here, which I know now is wrong. This, you see here the normal range, and it's suggesting, and I've been guilty of this in the past as well, thinking that the estradiol serves no purpose in men, and it's not true at all. So you can see the normal range here.
Yeah.
It just says below 2.5,
right.
And I think that's a mistake. Like estradiol, it's involved in insulin sensitivity and leanness, and it's really not good. And actually, that reminds me, the original reason we were looking at this was because Derek
suffered.
Had very low estradiol, and I can show you a couple of.
It's not good if it's either too high or too low. Is there a sweet spot?
And even in women, estrogen is estradiol is a very insulin sensitizing hormone, and I know that a lot of the estrogen is it kind of synthesized and managed through the bowel. So making sure that you're getting the proper fiber and you have the proper biotic composition, incredibly important for estrogenic health.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, infertility, PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis.
and they're calling it the estrobiome now. Just the regulation of estrogen through the GI system.
Right. The amount of testosterone required to maintain. So the men are all thinking about testosterone, right? And
Yeah,
androgen deficiency. But here we see that the estradiol is involved in that too, and that you shouldn't ignore it.
I totally agree.
Interesting.
Yeah, our gut microbiota, I've read too that they modulate the phytoestrogens in our food. Some can amplify the good stuff, but they can also turn it to like inflammatory estrogens as well. It really depends on what's there.
Okay. We absolutely know that Bob, the H. pylori could be the root of all of this, right? If you get rid of the H. pylori, it's going to change everything.
Yeah, I actually was just reading a study recently too in Parkinson's and gut microbiota. Eradication of H. pylori improved dopamine and symptoms of Parkinson's in a human study. So it's very important to identify if H. pylori is overgrown. It's not a friend when it's in the nasty stage and overgrowing and trying to just maintain its anchor, in our gut. And it can affect so many axes of health, the hormones, skin particularly. A lot of rosacea is actually just H. pylori toxins coming out of the gut and the skin.
So here we've got Tina.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Hope you see some good changes. So Tina, she's had ear infections as a toddler, yeast infections as a teen, and as an adult, sinus and bladder. So she's had about 20 courses of antibiotics. This is really typical of many Western society inhabitants. So then she's gotten the Western society conditions: Hashimoto's, higher weight gain, hair loss, hormone insufficiencies or dysregulation, insulin, thyroid, female hormones, cortisol, melatonin, and then some food allergies. Thanks for coming and showing your labs to us. So she had a wonderful GI effects from April earlier this year. It showed gut inflammation, elevated SIGA, and low amounts of beneficials. The ARCI was high. Methanobrevi, that instead of low, hers was high. Moderately green was E. coli, and moderately green was Fusobacterium. So again, we're seeing this inflammatory strain known as Fusobacterium, totally permeating guts, and probably related to the permeability and subsequent flaring of the immune system and the autoimmune condition Hashimoto's.
And then what do you think about the Akkermansia being overgrown? Because normally we think of this as being a good guy.
No, it's not always. So when there's mucus being secreted, so we know there's mucus because of the SIGA, but this testing is very not selective. Sometimes there's no sign of gut inflammation, but in the upper gut, they have certain genetics. There's one test, they bifurcated the two types of IBD, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. Crohn's is more of the whole gut. Crohn's have more mucus, and their Akkermansia can go high, especially when they're in a high inflammatory state, because they have the genetics for goblet cell being turned on and highly expressed, so they make more mucus under like a situation where it's hostile and there's irritation. They make more mucus, but ulcerative colitis do not. So these people probably have low Akkermansia until things are really, nuclear blowout, bad. So it kind of depends on the person and what's going on. Yeah. So and then I'm not familiar with this part of the 2200, but the Sensi they located some yeast, but this profile screams yeast, and definitely if there was no organic acid done yet, but I'd recommend one so you can track some of that.
Yeah. Where do you see the yeast? I didn't see that.
The Sensi, go a little lower. I couldn't go just a little lower, below the parasite. So I think this is on visualization. I'm not sure how they do this part. So the lab comment, Sensi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's good they go the old-fashioned way and have a little look at it. Yeah, so anyway, it is very, indicative textbook, yeast, candida, overgrowth. 4+ E. coli was grown out on culture, 1+ group B strep, 2+ bacillus. Some lacto was grown out. So, a lot of lactose is associated with histamine and lactate production, D-lactate production. So, Wouldn't be surprised if these are the histamine ones because she reports all these food allergies. A lot of other people have reported some seasonal allergies. That goes hand in hand too. But food allergies, histamine is very irritating in the gut lining. So we have, when people have over acid production, we have H2 blockers. These are histamine blockers, more targeting the gut. But probiotics can do that too. There's a lot of great probiotics again, and Bifidum maximus is one of the highest, most potent on the market, and it helps degrade the histamine that may be excessive. And even better, it lowers pathogens by squeezing them out, killing them, to lower them and to insert in and become part of the commensals. So the 4+ E. coli to me is one of the targets to kind of consider, and the group E strep. So again, you want to avoid all strep products just because there might be some cross-reactivity. You might already have antibodies against strep, so additional strep is just going to not be so great. Avoid yogurts that have strep, Thermophilus, because your body's just, maybe already having antibodies that target the cell wall and the markers, glycoproteins on strep. And just so many products have it. It's just, supermarket products just have a lot of strep. It's kind of cheap and easy to put in there.
I should add actually that, whenever I suspect there might be autoimmunity in pretty much everybody that I work with, but when you've got clear signs, as in Hashimoto's, which is the case here, I think it makes a lot of sense to try the autoimmune paleo diet. And maybe I can link to that. I'm sure that that Tina already knows about it, but just in case, I can tell you that I've seen many people now, hundreds of people get fantastic results on this diet, including myself, and it really is a very low-risk intervention for you to try.
To
see if that makes you feel any better.
Yeah, 6 weeks of AIP, autoimmune paleo diet, it makes huge changes, because when your body's leaking, and it's severely leaking, anything you're eating is coming over, and you actually need to shift everything out just to different types of food that aren't reacting. And then they can be reintroduced again once the immune system calms down. Nothing is forever, hopefully. Even our family, we've been so lucky, the soil probiotics and the Bifido and the good lacto, we're able to eat gluten and dairy again, when we want to. But we just don't do it a lot because we know it'll cause issues with our genetics and stuff.
I still can't believe you do that. I've managed to reintroduce eggs and nuts, and those are just fine for me now. And I have to be careful, when I go race my bike, that changes. But yeah, gluten, I'm done with that. That's for sure.
Yeah, we don't do a lot for sure, but the dairy is getting easier and easier, and nuts are getting easier and easier. So it's not forever, but we want this, we want the resilience, we want the buffer, and that's provided by the microbes, the ones that are commensal for humans, the ones that live on our mucosal lining, that love to eat mucus, oligosaccharides, and inulin. We want to get to that point because these fibers are really like air for the gut. Everyone should be able to tolerate them. But temporarily, under disease and dysbiosis, you want to actually, strip down, unplug, use only the minimum things to heal the gut. And then, I love AIP, but all the practitioners I talk with, we get them off as soon as we can. Same with GAPS, I love it, but we get them off as soon as we can because they're very limited. They will eventually cause actually gut issues because they're low in fiber, low in prebiotics, low in all the health, boosting, enhancing minerals, vitamins, and prebiotics for our gut microbiota. But for sure, yes, if you have not considered the AIP, it's really great to take out all the possible lectins that may be triggering the immune system at this time, because we want to shut the immune system, not use steroids, but we want to naturally reduce triggers that are hypersensitizing, that have already hypersensitized the immune system, which is 80% of the gut. And then once it's healed, then it's great to, I love certain botanicals like grapeseed extract, grapeseed pips, proanthocyanidins. All these are great antioxidants because they help seal the gut, and they also normalize our immune function, so it's not on alert all the time. It's just draining on the body for that. And so these products, they also help lower blood sugars, they're insulin sensitizing, they lower blood pressures, they even reduce plaque or improve NO, nitric oxide, and erectile dysfunction in some human trials. These are just ways that we have at our fingertips that augment healing because we need it during times of moderate to severe dysbiosis. Okay, so we have Todd finally.
Yeah, one last one. So Todd, when was the last time you spoke to Todd, Amina? I feel like I've not spoke to Todd for quite a while.
I spoke with Todd not too long ago. He's doing relatively well. I think we started him back up on the fiber program. He had done a killing phase, from what I understand, and hadn't started up on the fiber program, and we went ahead and started that. But I think recently he had just a little bit of a backslide.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It looks like he made some progress and then
Yeah.
and then had a bit so sort of main complaint is anxiety, and the 401H was normal. So this is what a normal 401H looks like. I mean, the E. coli it sounds bad, but this is what I consider to be a normal result. There's really not much to see here.
Do you have a, you see, you know, the biohealth, none of them have dates. It's kind of sad. I can't tell when they're done. So was there an organic that went
This one was done just recently, and no, he didn't. I don't believe that we did not do a new.
We'll get to see organics and see what's leaking and what degree of leaking.
And I think we have one from, a while ago, but not a retest.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Textbook, four markers were moderately green. The same ones: hydroxybenzoate, hydroxyphenyl acetate in the can, moderate D-arabinol, and the moderate amount of D-lactate. So again, that indicates histamine and D-lactate production.
This is so important, and I need to just double cross-check I mean, I would test this again because it's just so important. Todd is taking the Thorn EXOS multivitamin, which has methylated B vitamins in it, including 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate and the methylated B12. But this organic acid, methylmalonate, it builds up when there is insufficient B12. And clearly this is such an important nutrient, and you really don't want to mess with this. And so I personally would redo the organic acids test to make sure that this is fixed. It'd be worth it just for that one marker alone. And then chiurenate. Chiurenate is just another really interesting metabolite. It's a breakdown product of tryptophan, and it means that you're not producing serotonin and melatonin. Serotonin being an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and melatonin being the sleep hormone. So this again is like, you want to make sure this is gone.
And it probably is contributing to the worry and the sleep.
Yeah, exactly. It's inhibitory. It's like putting the brakes on inside your brain, and if you can't do that, then your brain tends to get a bit anxious, right? Yeah. So let's have a look. So Todd, he did do the 2200 series test, which gives you. So this is the problem with the 401H, right? It comes back like this. The parasitology is really strong, and that's why I still prefer this test. But if it comes back and there's no parasites, you've really got nothing. Whereas the Genova test gives you more details, but I find that the parasitology is weaker, or at least it has been in the past. And maybe that situation has changed again, and I need to look at this test again.
I mean, I think after multiple antibiotics, it's not unusual that I think if someone did have a parasite or a protozoa, it's probably eradicated after the multi doses.
Yeah, there's nothing to see
but then unfortunately, what becomes missing, he had a textbook 2200 as you're showing. There's no methanobrevy, no archae. Below detectable levels bifido, below detectable levels Akkermansia, yet it's flaring in E. coli, flaring. There's a moderate level of Prevotella, which is kind of aggressive. It loves grains and starches. Moderate amount of high amounts of Bacteroides, high amounts of sulfide gas producing dissolvable Vibrio, and high amounts of Fuso. The Fuso is in the green. That outnumbers bifido and Akkermansia, so that's kind of wrong. So probably has had multiple antibiotics. He said 10 courses. But the hemolytic, see, often I don't see hemolytic E. coli being identified, but he had 4+ hemolytic E. coli, so that's something to kind of monitor, because not often does Genova pick it out as hemolytic, although often when I see low amounts of beneficial bacteria but high amounts of the opportunistic commensals, then you have to think it's probably the more adhesive, the more toxic kind of E. coli. So on this February test, it was a hemolytic E. coli, 4+, very high. Yeah, and then he's great. He did the ubiome, and not sure when that was done, but that was a while ago. No AC, no bifido again. 2% staph, 3.5% gemella, which is kind of a hemolytic nasty one. 3.6% clostridium. He didn't have very many good stuff at all. High pseudomonas, high moraxella, high pastorella, which contains Haemophilus, which is an upper respiratory, pathogen. And he had reports of lots of strep, lots of sinusitis growing up in hives in college. So these all kind of jive up, and the strep was 32%. I think.
Oh, right. Yeah. I do remember this now.
Infection, yeah. So it's probably just a temporary, transient thing. But this is what happens. It's great to have this time series because we can see, there's a loss of all these good things, and then a flourishing, like a bloom, And again, this is really easy to shift out. I see a lot of changes when people have the right probiotic, adequate amounts, even potent levels, certainly fiber later if it's if they can tolerate, but definitely make sure the upper gut is clean. With a lot of Bacteroides and Prevotella, you want to hold off on some prebiotics and fiber until a little bit later, but choose selective fiber that that is safe and selective for bifidolongum, not any of the Bacteroides that might be growing. And then tracking, using either ubiome or even better, use a CDSA or the Genova, which is great if you have any kind of insurance other than Aetna or Humana. These are billed through Genova, and for $109 only, you can get the culture and the qPCR through which is identified through MALDI-TOF, and get accurate levels of what's going on in the gut. So I think it's definitely worth tracking this and continue tweaking a little, and the D-arabinitol is moderate. Also, don't forget to have a yeast, a candida protocol.
D-arabinitol, yeah.
Yeah. So, I
realised I wasn't showing my screen when I showed the organic acids earlier.
And then
there's this one, the methylmalonate, showing the need for B12. I think is really important to make sure that's fixed.
Yeah, it's hard to have a good immunity without the appropriate B vitamins that support MTHFR. This gentleman is a variant. I mean, sorry, Todd. Yeah, Todd is probably a variant. And when I have one too, and when you have a variant, it's a little harder to address all the immunity issues, just because there's different things that block it. And heavy metals, at some point, if heavy metals aren't addressed, look at heavy metals if things don't fully clear out. Yeah, what a wonderful case. Thanks for submitting everything, Todd.
Okay, well, I think that's it. We run out of cases.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks, Amelia, for all your input. I love your RN background and how you gather all these cases together.
I do my best. Some days are better than others.
So what I'll do next is there's going to be a replay of this video, and I will have a transcript made, and then I'll email everyone with the transcript because I know that it can be quite difficult to keep up with what we're saying. So yeah, that'll be done in the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay, and then we have the questions from the group in the chat room, and I'll answer what I can, and Christopher will answer what we can. I'll insert some links that I talked about, and the studies that you put up. Those would be great to share with them, I think. Oh
yeah, I should do that, shouldn't I? I should link to those, and so that people can look at those. So many great
feedback. I think this is a little more than last time. Hopefully a little more interactive, and we'll get the post webinar, activity kind of going on. And if you have suggestions on how to make it better or what more you'd like to hear about, again, Christopher and I, we're not physicians, so we can't diagnose. We can only coach. We can only share our clinical thoughts in that way. So thanks for your patience on that. But we love all your interest and hope that more people get more testing and learn how to read these or learn how to make some value and merit out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my goal running these tests. I'm a pro mountain biker, and I found that if I correct the biochemical problems that I find on these lab results, then I go faster on my bike. And the same is true.
You're number one right now, you told me.
Sorry?
How long have you been number one, Christopher?
Oh, yeah, so I'm doing pretty well in a local cyclocross.
In the local area, he's like the number one cyclist.
He's our number one.
Very knew that. But now it's official. How long did that ranking get up? Is that for all of this year so far?
Yeah, exactly. It's for the I'm winning the series points this year. So if I win 3 more, or if I do well in 3 more races, then I'll win the series points. But yeah, that's my goal. Is like to help people achieve the best results possible using some of these tests. It's not really. I'm not trying to pretend to be a doctor. They do something different. You know, it's more about performance for me.
Yeah, I have a bottom line. I just want people to feel good, and if we can achieve it through gut and nutrigenomics and looking at all the different testing, I think that's great. And to teach you, and then you can help your neighbors, your friends, your family. I think it'll.
And Grace, I just wanted to say thank you for teaching all of us. You do such a wonderful job, and you have such a breadth of knowledge. So thank you very much for all the work that you do, and thank you for sharing it with us. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's really fun. And if I said things that weren't clear or didn't seem as simple as they could be, let me know so we can. You know, we'll probably be seeing a lot of similar cases in the future, and yeah, I'd love to learn how to articulate like more basic concepts if you think that's necessary. So thanks very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Cheers, then, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was great. Thanks, Christopher.